the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. I just saw Israel come in. It's 2-1 Argentina, Israel. So, Israel emailed me last night saying, "What time's the game start?" Advent is supposed to make us ready for Christmas. But in order to be ready for Christmas, we have to understand how unready we are for the arrival of God in our lives, and how resistant we can be. We're good at checking off our gift lists. I think I distributed mine to you, Javier, y Daniel, y Ramiro. I think I've got most of mine checked off. Some of us put up decorations. My house remains vacant. But are we ready to be unprepared for what God is doing with us? We meet two very different men in our readings today. Ahaz, the king of Judah, during very challenging times in 735. And in Isaiah's eyes, Ahaz was a very bad actor. Ahaz took up the throne at age 20, and thereafter he did any expedient thing that he could to stay in power. He became a vassal of the Assyrians, of which Isaiah did not approve. He set up idols in the temple. He promoted the worship of popular foreign deities, and in a quest to secure his power, he sacrificed some of his own children to the god Moloch. Isaiah had been born into the aristocracy, and he too was a person of influence. He was what we would today call political from the pulpit. He regularly condemned Ahaz as somebody who did not care for the people over whom he ruled and was interested only in himself. And Isaiah was sufficiently powerful enough in his own right that he could speak truth to power without losing his life, and he often did so. Today, Isaiah offers Ahaz a sign, some direction from God. But Ahaz refuses to receive the sign. He refuses with false piety. "I will not ask, and I will not put the Lord to the test." Ahaz didn't want direction from the Lord, though he didn't want to say so too loudly. He didn't want to know what God was up to in the world. He preferred the status quo. He wanted to keep things just the way they were, because things just the way they were working pretty well for him. Isaiah isn't easily intimidated and gives Ahaz the sign anyway, whether Ahaz wants it or not. Ahaz receives a prophecy about the coming one, whose birth we will celebrate next Saturday. The promise was experienced by Ahaz as a threat to his power. He could have been encouraged. He could have taken opportunity to change the way that he was conducting himself in the world, but character is destiny, and Ahaz is not responsive. We also meet Joseph today, a very different sort of man. Not high-born, a hard-working carpenter, a decent fellow. He is called righteous. He enjoyed a good reputation in the humble circles in which he moved. He would have been marinated in the religious observances of his people. He would have kept the Sabbath, the daily prayers, and the fast days. He was a righteous man with a good reputation. In those days, as in many places still today, marriages were arranged. The object of marriage was to ensure clan solidarity, produce children, and increase economic prospects. No one talked about romance. That was a 12th century invention. If you had pleasant feelings for your spouse, that was icing on the cake. But the important thing was social solidarity. Joseph was ready to take his place in the community. He was betrothed to the daughter of a decent family. The dowry had been paid. The caterer had been hired. The wedding invitations had been sent. And then his betrothed turns up pregnant. Joseph had prepared well for life, but he had not prepared for scandal and shame. And this was certainly the ruination of Mary. Even if they had feelings for each other, how alone they must have been, how separated from each other. The angel Gabriel had not yet appeared to Joseph. He had not appeared to the town of Nazareth to assure them this child was uniquely from God. There was no public corroboration of Mary's vision, and hence there was no protection for her. Death by stoning became a distinct possibility for Mary if Joseph chose to prosecute. Her faith as an outcast was sealed. It had taken a great deal of courage for her to say to the angel Gabriel, "Be it done to me according to your word." Devotion to Mary remains very strong, as we witnessed December 12th on the Feast of Guadalupe, when the largest crowd yet made it to Tepeyac, where I have been 3 times, and it was crowded on off days. The Church calls Mary the first among the saints, and Joseph is the second, but Joseph gets short shrift. I once asked a kid preparing for the annual Christmas pageant what part he was playing. "Nobody," he said, downcast. "I wanted to be a wise man, but they made me be Joseph. He doesn't do anything." Joseph, being righteous, didn't want to wed Mary now that he and all the neighbors knew of her immorality, but he was unwilling to prosecute. He was unwilling to make the divorce public. He aimed to dismiss her quietly. His world had collapsed, but he can find another wife and still pursue the promising bourgeois life of a prosperous carpenter. But then Gabriel shows up for him as well in a dream. And on the basis of a night vision, can you imagine, he determines to wed Mary after all. This is his outward ruination. Business dries up. The local baker refuses to bake a wedding cake. He does not exercise his conjugal rights until after the birth of the child. And while in Bethlehem, he and Mary attract the attention of the venal King Herod, who is slaughtering infants to secure his power, another Ahaz in the world where many will do anything to preserve position. And so Joseph flees to Egypt until Herod's death, after receiving yet another night vision. Joseph's well-planned life is over before it got off the ground. Life is never the way it should be. It is just the way it is. That's true for you and for me, just as it was true for Joseph and Mary. Advent is a time of preparation, but the truth is, we can never really be prepared for what life will deal us. Advent summarizes our inability to be ready. It is the sacrament of our not knowing. Episcopal priest Susan Guthrie thought she was a fairly accomplished musician, but she wanted to improve, so she hired a coach. "You play okay," he told her, and she probably felt the way I feel when people tell me that my Spanish is understandable. "You play okay, but you don't play res very well." Madre Guthrie was puzzled because rests are the moments when you don't play your instrument. The coach set her to rehearsing in a resonant space and told her to listen to the silence. The silence, he told her, is as important as the music. Enhanced by the room, Guthrie writes, The sound of the flute soared over the space and back from the far wall, but the silences, when I paused to breathe, were even more articulate, complementing my sound with the grace of infinity and creating wholeness. The silence shaped itself to the voice of my flute. The music depended upon my musicianship and assent to the silence between the notes, so that my notes magnified the silence. Ahaz did not want a word from the Lord. He kept himself busy, self-satisfied as he clung to power. Joseph managed to stop and to listen, and was still enough to hear God speaking to him in a night vision. Isaiah still gave Ahaz the word he did not want to hear 2,700 years ago. Look, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bear a child, and the child shall be called Emmanuel, which means God with us, not God against us, not God before us, or behind us, or over us, or around us, or beneath us. God with us. Not God in life as it should be, but God with us in life as it is. And sometimes that life gets pretty uncomfortable, as it did for Joseph and Mary. Advent is a time of spiritual preparation. Though unlike Joseph, we may not have marinated in daily prayer and a world of devotion. Spiritual preparation requires some discipline, and we still have a week left in Advent. Our world is all flute. We think we are musicians, but we know nothing of the wholeness that comes from playing the silence, of attention to night visions, and a willingness to hear the voice of God. Because God never sends us the life we have prepared for, but some other life where he can be more fully revealed. And so we ought to make room for silence and be ready for what is coming for us. Amen.